What's going on, guys? I'm Jaye the Black. Shout out to everybody that's tuning in. I want to talk about the controversy, quote unquote controversy, going on with former NFL defensive lineman Booger McFarland. Now, Booger McFarland took to the show that he was on ESPN, because he works on ESPN now. Of course, he asked for some time, and they were speaking basically about the Dwayne Haskins situation. And he made some comments that I really did not find controversial, but some did, and especially the mother of an NFL player, well, now former NFL player, Eli Apple, his mother, Annie Apple. She actually started to troll Booger McFarland. And then he ended up responding to her, saying that Booger is on ESPN auditioning for Fox. And as you can see, he responded to her. We're going to get into his response. But first, I want to talk about what's going on, and get you to the particulars of everything that's going on, because he basically spoke about how NFL players of today care more about their brand than they do being better football players and helping their teams win. Now, I will say this, about this situation about NFL players being more selfish now than ever before. A lot of times in this day and age, there are players who feel it's necessary to grow a brand outside of social media. I don't think that there's anything wrong with growing a brand outside of social media. But what you shouldn't do, and this is what got Juju Smith-Schuster in a situation he was in, was that he was on there dancing on the logos of players, that's not Dwayne Haskins, but I'm just using an example of teams, and his team is not performing well, and him dancing on the other team logo is being used as motivation, and he's doing that for his TikTok. Okay, that's one example of a player trying to build a brand. You got players that have YouTube pages or Twitches or whatnot. There's nothing wrong with that if you keep your focus on the field. The problem with Dwayne Haskins, and I said it in my video, Dwayne Haskins doesn't care about football. And there are other players just like him. That's why they don't last very long. But let's get into this article. It says Washington football team quarterback Dwayne Haskins was released today after a series of bad decisions and poor play plagued his tenure in the nation's capital. It seems like everyone had an opinion on what went wrong for Haskins, or why he could never reach his full potential. Of those opinionated people, including ESPN's Booger McFarland, who got very psychological with his take on the 23-year-old Haskins. Now, in this video, he's speaking about players caring more about themselves and their brand. So he added this to the video to give it more context. He says, my message was to all players, which I said, but specifically the part of the NFL that makes up almost 70% African-American players. And of course, I'm not speaking on all, but in my 20 plus years around the NFL, I've seen too many cases. I stand by what I said, whether you agree with it or not. And I completely agree with him having his own opinion. Now, he does make some very, very good points in what he was saying in the video and in this extra post here. He's a veteran. He's been in locker rooms. He's been on teams where you've had guys who are highly sought after draft picks come in and fail. Look at Jamarcus Russell. There's been countless others. These guys got big money and didn't last more than 4 years in the NFL. And when you are a quarterback, when you are a black quarterback to be exact, and you fail as quickly as Dwayne Haskins with all the talent he supposedly had, people need to talk about that. Period. We can't just ignore that. Now, people say, well, that happens with Caucasian players. But the difference is they're not at the script club after a loss. Okay? They're not ignoring the press after a game. And trust and believe Dwayne Haskins was doing other things behind the scenes that we have not known of yet. The Washington football team is holding on to that information. Now, there were people who did not like what Booger McFarland had to say. All right. As you can see from some of the responses here, people who, these, guys who are completely fatherless, they don't know of black men holding other black men accountable. And again, let's get back to Annie Apple. Now, Annie Apple took to social media and she was trolling Booger to the point to where Booger responded. And this is what Booger said to her. She said, Booger's on ESPN auditioning for Fox. He says, I was on ESPN speaking truth. I was on ESPN speaking the truth to the segment of America, which I care about. The segment I am a part of. The segment to which needs to hear it the most. If the shoe fits, wear it. If not, move on. There was a time when black men giving black men some sound advice was a good thing. And that's the problem, Booger McFarland. They don't care about your advice. You see, women like Annie Apple, who has her own checkered past, she only thinks that the truth can come from the mouths of melanated women in regards to melanated men. You see, black men, I think Caucasian men can hold black men more accountable than black men hold other black men accountable. All right? And the problem is when you have these women who have a matriarchal mindset, they're not going to take too kindly to a black man like Booger McFarland trying to hold these black athletes accountable. Do you see how many black athletes fail not only due to their poor off-field choices, as far as their spending habits, wifing up and having kids with a bunch of women, having mental issues, getting into trouble with the law, a lot of those things. And the thing is with her is that, again, I've talked about how she has her own checkered situation. Okay. Now her son, Eli Apple, and I made a video about this a couple years ago. So this is not like anything new. I've spoken about it before. Her son, Eli Apple, was in the NFL. He was recently with the Panthers after being with the Saints, I believe, for a year or 2 years. And then before then being with the Giants. So his career is pretty much in doubt because he had recently got cut by the Panthers as of October of this year. And people have blamed it on the issues with his mother and what went on in the offseason in the year of 2017. Because after his first year, his rookie year, he was never the same. And people are saying it was due to the issues that was going on with his mother and his stepfather and her stepping out on her stepfather. And those are not lies. Those have been documented as being put out there as reports. So none of that is fraudulent. None of that is fake information. It's all public information, right? You can either admit to it or deny it. But those reports are out here. This article is from 2017, okay? And the thing is with this, what Booger McFarland is saying, you see, what Booger is trying to do is actually speak logic. People don't understand logic these days. People only understand emotion. They're going to look at what Booger McFarland is saying and saying that you're bashing these black athletes. You should be uplifting them. As one guy said it here, you should be mentoring these guys. But how are you going to mentor guys who don't even want to be accountable themselves? These are grown men. Grown men should be able to handle criticism. Booger McFarland is saying you have a young black athlete at quarterback who has all this promise, who's not being able to live up to it. We have to be able to look at that. But nobody wants to look at that. They just want to look at Booger McFarland as if he's the problem. He's a former NFL player. He's been in locker rooms. He's been around coaches. He's been around teammates. I'm sure he's mentoring the men around him. But the thing is that you have women with this matriarchal mindset. They don't like to see these guys. And she's literally trolling this guy. I understand. She's supposed to be this pro-black, surviving in America. But you're trolling another black man for speaking on a failed quarterback. That's what Dwayne Haskins is. He's a failed NFL quarterback as of today. And he's speaking about why. And it's because there are now the thing is with Booger McFarland, I wouldn't have had went the brand route. That's the one thing I can look at what he said and disagree with. I would have went with the selfishness route. There are guys who are more me. They're more about, let me go get my followers up. Let me go chase these Instagram models. How many videos did I have of these guys chasing behind these Instagram models, getting put on blast by these Instagram models? That's where their mind is at. They're more about them going and chasing these women and spending money and doing this and that than they are about bettering themselves as a player. Because I will say this though, you don't have a brand. You don't have a brand if you don't have the numbers on the field. If you're not going to Pro Bowls, if you're not putting up the numbers, if your team is always losing and you show no emotion towards winning. Like, look at Odell Beckham Jr. Odell Beckham Jr. does carry himself like a brand, but the guy has a ton of endorsements. I mean, what are you going to do? The guy has a lot of endorsements, okay? But when it's time to ball out, he will ball out. He will. Not every week. There's some weeks he seemed like he's taking some plays off or some days off, but more than likely he's going to make plays, okay? He's going to make plays. But you do have the guys out here who really don't care about the team. They only care about themselves. They don't necessarily care whether or not the team is winning. They just care about, hey, I'm putting some numbers up. Look at my highlights. I'm the star of the team. Look at Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown is also a perfect example. Antonio Brown is a perfect example of a guy who was trying to build a brand that went wrong. Okay, he tried to make himself the new Terrell Owens, and it went completely left to where he was left out of the league for a little while. So I definitely would go more of the, caring about, listen, I have no problem with these guys building their brand, because a lot of these guys do that just so they can make money outside of football. They don't want to have to rely on their football income. They want endorsements, which is fine. I have no problem with these guys getting paid as much money as they possibly could get paid. But the one thing I will say here is that you have women like Annie Apple who have their own issues, who want to sit there and troll and go off on Booger McFarland because he had an opinion on why these black athletes are not doing very well. They're not surviving in the NFL.